Welcome to another episode of The Marketer's Edge, a series designed to share senior level marketing perspective about marketer challenges, opportunities, and agency relationships. Our goal is to help marketers and agencies learn from other marketers across different industries. Today, we're talking with Jason Norton, the SVP of Marketing and Business Development at DuTrac Community Credit Union, based out of Dubuque, Iowa. Jason, how are you doing today?
I'm great. We have some sunshine here in Dubuque, so I'm like all about it. After all these days of gray, I'm like loving the sunshine. I had to tone down my curtains actually to get some light out of here for a change. It was nice.
That's great. I wish we had that here in Cincinnati, but unfortunately we've been under some cloudy skies for a while. So
It's heading your way, I promise.
what's it?
It's heading your way, I promise.
There we go. There we go. Well, listen, I appreciate you joining us today, and I've got a small handful of questions for you. But I thought before we do that, can you tell me a little bit about DuTrac Community Credit Union, what you do for the organization? I'd like our audience to know, what kind of company it is and what you do for them.
You bet. DuTrac Community Credit Union was founded in 1946, just down the road, about 2 miles at the John Deere Dubuque Tractor Works. Some folks came up from Moline, Illinois. Of course, that's where John Deere's headquartered, and they wanted to start a plant up here. They began, a gentleman did, with a tackle box, a few dollars and some cents. He had 5 members. And from that, he actually earned himself an actual table within the organization that started the credit union, and joined more members came about. We actually got the charter to be a community credit union so we can serve people outside the organization which founded us. And so we were asked to leave the plant, and so we could serve people because they want security, reasons and things like that. And it's been just a pleasure. We now have over 50,000 members. We purge our members every year, so those that aren't active are purged off. Some folks don't do that. So you'll see like they have 90,000 members, but maybe 40,000 aren't active. I'm making that up, but it's something we feel we need to do to cut our costs down. And we're just crossed over $1 billion in assets. That used to be a big number a few years back. Still is a big number for us. And we're one of the most heavily concentrated areas for credit union membership in the entire country. It's just been a real back approach of what we have always believed here in this part of the state. And it's a great tradition to have, and it's a very competitive tradition to have. So it's a good way to hone your marketing skills any day of the week.
That's great. That's great. So when you say the most concentrated in terms of like members closest, tightest in terms of location, or?
You bet. We have more credit unions in this part of the country than anywhere else, meaning that the membership in credit unions is very high. Some people belong to as many as 6 credit unions. Not only are there a number of credit unions of all different sizes, but we have 7 financial institutions right here in Dubuque that are over $1 billion in assets. And when you think about that, that's a lot of assets for a town of 60,000 people.
Right.
And it's that way all up and down the river. I think it's a lot has to do with our labor relationships that we have in our products that we produce here in this part of the country. Our ag relationships, hardworking people who bond together to get something done. All those things really have contributed to our success as credit union folks here in this part of the country.
That's great. Yep. That sounds like what credit unions are all about, right? The community and.
Yeah, when you think back how they started, you had some folks who just had a common goal, right? They maybe wanted to put up a church, a community center, something like that, but they didn't have the money. They all got together with their money. They bonded together. I mean, when they had enough, they built that darn church or community center, and then they started having a little extra, and they could do more things. And when people work together, there's nothing they can't achieve. And that's one of the things I stress all the time when I talk about credit unions.
That's great. That's great. So I'm curious. I've interviewed a number of marketing executives like yourself that operate in the credit union space, and they all share different challenges they faced outside of just the challenges they faced during the pandemic, which were obvious ones. As you look forward over the next 3 to 5 years, what do you see the industry looking like, and what do you believe to be, potentially some of the toughest challenges facing the industry?
I call it the power of contraction. When I first started, there were so many more credit unions than there are today, but the market has said, no, we need to be a certain size, have a certain volume of activity in order to survive. But, those small credit unions help people so much more maybe than us larger credit unions, meaning, they get right down in there. They know those folks, and maybe it's a loan for some dentures, true story, or maybe it's for dinner that night. Folks need that kind of relationship with a financer who knows them, knows that they'll pay it back, and such and so forth. But it's going to be that contraction factor, and And it's always been that way when you think about the banking industry as a whole. But it's also going to be the transition from traditional marketing media to digital marketing media. I
Hmm.
myself am not a marketer, right? I mean, I don't have a degree in marketing. I have a degree as an accountant. That's a little European history along the side, but that's a different story. And I've had to learn by experience. Someone just said to me and said, "You are a natural born marketer." I said, "Me?" I had no idea, really, truly. And so I've always surrounded myself with people who are so much more brighter than I am, much more capable than I am. And as a result of that, I've enjoyed some success. And I think the key is just to be treating people like you'd like to be treated. Just be human with
Yeah.
them, but be a leader when you need to be a leader too.
Right. Yep. No, that's great. That's great advice. It sounds like there's been a fair amount of merger and acquisition activity in the credit union space, or not really.
There has been, I've been here for DuTrac 14 years, and we've merged into DuTrac four smaller credit unions. I'm talking credit unions with assets between 10 and $16 million. And it takes us just as much energy for a $16 million credit union as it does for a $16 billion credit union. I'm probably exaggerating that a bit, but it's the same kind of effort, same type of thing like that. And you have people who are getting older. The burden of the regulatory system is so great, but it's done for their safety. It's done for the right reasons, but the burden for just a few folks is just too much. And they'll have anyone to take over that shop for them, or the expertise to do so, or the wages. When you think about how much those folks are probably making in relationship to what maybe a manager here at a larger credit union makes, you kind of have to wince because they're
Right.
working so much and so hard, but they're not getting necessarily the remuneration reward that you expect them to see.
Hmm. Do the merger and acquisition laws as they relate to credit unions kind of mirror the banking industry as well?
They do largely, I assume. I can't really speak to that exactly
Okay.
because I've never been working for a bank at all.
Right.
But
Okay.
we actually went to here at DuTrac a business partner who is affiliated with banks, and they got in that business because they know it's very similar, obviously. And it's about economies of scale. It's about personalities. It's about
Sure.
value. What value can I bring to this other institution, and vice versa?
Right.
Um, it's a bit of a tricky walk though too at the same time because it's there has to be that desire for both parties to meet somewhere in the middle, and if they can't find that middle ground, it's not going to work probably.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just curious, as you were talking, we were just sort of talking about the M&A thing. Has there ever been a situation where like a bank has acquired a credit union? Is that even allowed? I don't know.
you know I'm going back in my memory banks here. I've worked in the credit union space since 1987. My first job out of
Okay.
college with Price Waterhouse was a church credit union of all things, an audit, and so I can honestly say I've been working with credit unions all my life. And so there's been a number of course, credit unions who have purchased banks. And I know
Mhm.
there's been attempts by banks to purchase credit unions, but I don't know if those
Yeah.
deals ever went through. I'm going to say yes, but I'm going to fall back and say I'm not
Yeah.
sure, to be honest with you.
Yeah. No, it's cool. I was just curious. I mean, it's kind of, in sort of the consumer branding world, you might see, well, you do. You see like big beer companies buying small craft brewers. And, because it's more of it's a local special thing. And I could see a big bank if they were allowed to,
Mhm.
buy up a credit union just to sort of have a different relationship with consumers. But anyway, I was
And
just
for that
curious.
very reason, they probably wouldn't actually. If a bank who is very on the opposite end of the scale when it comes to our advocacy efforts were to
Mhm.
partner with a credit union, you'd have to ask yourself, what value did they see in that credit union? Because
Right.
if they partner with us, they can become tax free. We don't pay
Okay.
any state or federal income taxes. We pay
Yeah.
property taxes and sales tax and
Right.
that sort of thing.
Right.
And so you'd have to, all this talk that banks have had that we have this unfair advantage, would go up in smoke because you have this bank now going and say, hey, I want to be like them, and we invite them to, but they don't want to go
Yeah.
that route for some reason. Maybe that's an earnings per share thing. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Interesting. So I'm curious, are there things that you're doing for your credit union and your community that you think differs from what maybe the typical marketing executive is doing for a credit union? I ask because you seem to, have your hands on a lot of different things. So just curious if there's some different things you guys are doing from a marketing standpoint that others may not be doing.
I believe strongly that everyone has an equal foot, that's equal right to be here in the United States or wherever they are living, and have an right to access the same things. And so
Hmm.
when I find and see myself around folks who have been challenged in some way, maybe unjustly challenged in some way, it kind of gets underneath my skin. I guess I could have been one of those folks who's an activist back in the 60s at one point in time, but I just get underneath my skin. So I personally am involved in an organization here in town called the Fountain of Youth program. And what it does, the Fountain of Youth, is run by a gentleman who is a former person who served time in the penitentiary. He would rob people just to get to and from home. And but along that way, he always had this deep faith. And while he was in that cell, he says the Lord talked to him and told him to change his ways, basically. And he did. And today he went back to work for a church. He stole from that church, and he'll tell you the story. I'm not telling you things he hasn't said to me or anyone else. But he found his way through all that. Now he's been meeting with the governor. He's gone out to Washington D.C. and
Hmm.
he's found this community. What they do, they find and they remove those roadblocks from intergenerational poverty. That
Right.
once you get in that mess, it just falls into one after the other, and they can't help themselves. It's not like they want to; it's just the way it is. It's terrible. And so I believe strongly in that organization. So when he came to me one day, wanted to know if I'd support an organization, it was just getting off the ground. I said, "Yeah, I will. I'll even pay the membership here at DuTrac for your commercial account." But I said, it's better that you go down the street to my fellow cooperative down the way, Dupaco, because they're really engaged with advocacy. DuTrac never really has been, but they are.
Mhm.
And partner with them. My point is, I love to partner with people and network with people and find them their resources that they need. And that's what DuTrac does. If we can't find the best solution for someone, we will put you in touch with someone who does. And
That's
we
awesome.
feel that's our obligation to find that person the best service. And if they come back for us some point in time in the future, great. If they don't, God bless them. That type of, because we want them to be successful and to have their dreams come true. And we really believe that. And I think, so many credit unions walk the talk and talk the walk, but we truly wear a white hat if we were a Western. You'd always see us in that. What we always tell the truth. We are what you see, and you see what you get. And we work hard, almost to the detriment of the credit union, to make sure a member is successful. It's weird, but it works.
No, that's great. I love it. I love it. I love the
Hmm.
passion. It's so important, and you don't see enough of that in business today. So a lot of people do think they talk the talk, but reality they're just talking. So
We can
um,
work harder at it, that's for sure. I mean, we're not perfect by any stretch. I don't want them to think that we are, but it's just about why are we here? We're here for a short time, and our roots are to help these folks get up off their feet. That's
yep,
what we do.
yep,
And there's so many people in this country who have wealth and who have the ability to share, and maybe don't. But we feel it's our obligation to make sure those folks have a foot up. And education's part of that, and working with them is part of that, and being with them at that finish line is part of it.
yeah, that's great. Are there other philanthropic activities that DuTrac gets involved in?
Yeah, the credit union has always had a strong tenet in education, community involvement, integrity is another of our core values. But with the education standpoint, we started our Kids Are Us credit unions. We go into middle school and grade school classrooms and teach about credit unions, and we open up a little credit union right there. We staff it with the children there in the room, and we do that now for as many years as I've been here. And Karen Tegler in our office does that, and she just has that rapport with people. Those kids just grow. You can just see them. We help out with JA, and so it all culminated into DuTrac. I looked around. I said, "Why aren't there any high school credit unions? Just a high school credit union here in the state of Iowa." We have this reputation for education. We have this reputation for credit unions. Marry them. There wasn't one. So I chartered the first in-school high school credit union in
Hmm.
Davenport, Iowa, Davenport North. And to hear and talk to those children, high school children, I should call them young adults really, and you see them coming in with their kids, and they're only 14 years old, or you see them coming in just all kinds of different social situations, and your heart goes out to them. But you have to follow the guidelines that we have here, and we all learn together, and we all learn that those differences fade very quickly, and we all learn that together we can get a lot more things done than we can individually. And I
That's
love that.
great.
I really love that part of what we do here.
Do you guys uh, work to make those kind of activities public, visible to the broader public? And if you do, how do you do that? Obviously, because that kind of work certainly has value in terms of reinforcing the equity of the DuTrac brand. Do do those things just organically get publicity, or do you attempt to help that in some way?
It's funny you should ask that question. Our Kids Are Us credit unions will sing each year during Christmas, and we provide those at no cost to the community. It's our Christmas gift back to the community. So from December until January, you'll hear these songs, Christmas songs, traditional Christmas songs, sung by a choir of young voices over Radio Dubuque. And it's just, that's our way of saying it's brought to them by DuTrac. We ask if they want to support, they can, but it's really about, again, organic support. The kids support themselves with they
Right.
bring in their change from their baseball card sales or their yard sales or lemonade stands, and we make it work, right? And those teachers just get down with them and work, and we have an application they fill out, and ultimately, it probably could get more press than it does, but we've always had this tradition here at DuTrac. We're arch conservative, very conservative folks, of being quiet,
Okay.
and we have one of the most brilliant people I know from a marketing standpoint is Joe Hearn. He's now the president of DuPaco. The things that you and I would think of as everyday common marketing occurrences, he started. And he has a thing I always talk about because I want to talk up that organization because they do good work. He's a great marketer for people are watching your program or listening to your program. Is that we every day go and look at people's credit. We try and make the credit better and serve their needs, right? So they branded it, and it's called a money makeover. And everyone talks about the money makeover, right? And so
Okay.
he made a whole career out of branding the things that they do ordinarily. And it's a wonderful way to say, this is what we do. We're just going to tell you about it. Here's the people who do it, right? And they're just people centric. They love people. They're a fun credit union. They take business seriously, and they're growing like Indians. They're growing all over the place. They're just everywhere. And they're just wonderful people. And those people know how to promote themselves and to promote the activities they do. We've always been very quiet. That's okay. It's just the difference in us. So we talk to people in a little different way. We get our message across, but maybe not as broadcast as some, and that works for us at the moment. I'd like to see
That's
more of it, but
that's great. That's great. I noticed that prior to DuTrac, you were the leader of league relations for the Credit Union National Association, and I'm just curious, more for my own edification and maybe our viewers. What does it mean to be the leader of league relations?
well, it's interesting. There's three groups that make up a credit union system. You have your natural person credit unions like DuTrac, where I work today. You have your leagues, and then you have the individual members themselves. And when you have that trade association with CUNY at the top or at the bottom, whichever you want to put them, and then you have all those state leagues, and then you have all these credit unions, there's just this movement of advocacy that goes up and down, and it's a consistent message across the board. And there's a lot of strength in those partnerships, and those strengths and partnerships translate into a common held message when we go up to Capitol Hill or to our state houses and talk about our credit union and what we do. Because we're under pressure all the time to be taxed by folks who think that we could be taxed. And as we like to say, why don't you try our side of the fence for a while and see how that works for you?
Mhm.
But of course they don't want to. But it's a great message, it's a consistent message, and it does a lot. But what happens is that there's personalities that you need to balance. Of course, you have 5,000-6,000 now credit unions, national brand, maybe 20 some leagues. Used to be much more than that. But you have these people who have personalities, and they have to work together, and it's amazing they do. And the events are just really an opportunity to commune, to strengthen, to look at your weaknesses and bolster those up, and to take your messages and make them stronger. And it was always a pleasure to walk in that office every single day to help those folks do what we do best. And no one does it better than the Credit Union National Association, that's for sure, and our league folks back in the individual states.
That's great. So, changing gears a little bit, can you talk to me a little bit about your marketing efforts for DuTrac? What kinds of things are you doing to build awareness and membership at DuTrac Credit Union?
As I said earlier, I'm not a marketer. I'm not, and I freely admit that. And unfortunately, or fortunately, or the case may be, in 2020, the creative side of DuTrac marketing, there's only five of us here. There's only been five. We were 300 million. There's only five when we're a billion. So you can tell we're stretched. We have to learn a lot all the time, which is great. Thank goodness I'm a quick learner or a slow one, one or the other. And we lost all of our creative. So 40% of the staff left. right?
Hmm.
And there was
Wow.
not a single person that knew how to do it, how to run the boards outside, the watch fire screens, how to do the in lobby TVs, how to get the e-blast out. We didn't know, and
Wow.
so and this ties in, I think, to what you talked about in your agency questions that you had talked about is that someone here in the office before she left referred us to J.W. Morton in the wonderful area of Cedar Rapids, and they introduced themselves as problem solvers. They weren't an ad agency, they weren't marketers, they were problem solvers.
Hmm.
And I wish I could show you. I have 5 pages, single space, probably 9 font style, and it's just promotion after job after request that they did for us for almost a year to get us back to being fully staffed, give us that time. Then we had to separate, of course, but they they developed a brand that we didn't know that we had in front of us. They helped us understand who we were better. They helped me understand what it means to be a marketer, and that agency relationship was so critical, so important. Dave Morton and his team there. I mean, there are times where I could literally cry, and I mean that
Hmm.
seriously because of what those folks have done for this credit union. And
Yeah.
yes, it costs a pretty penny, but not so pretty that we couldn't afford it, obviously. But I mean, you received in return the exact resources that made your credit union look its best. And they were the only ad agency, I believe, in the state of Iowa who ever had an ad run in the Super Bowl commercials.
Hmm.
And when I heard that, I thought, well, it can't be wrong, that bad, right? You know, what, let's give it a try. And
what
you meet
would
with
you say the name of the shop is?
J.W. Morton,
Okay.
J.W. Morton M in Cedar Rapids, and um, I can't express enough to you anywhere or anyone else how much they have changed my own life. And when I met Dave, I said, "This is who I want to be." When he's probably maybe 6, 7 years older than I am. He's not that much older, but he is just a wealth of wisdom, and he's worked
Hmm.
with other financial institutions. There's a competing bank here in the area, and their slogan that he came up with, and I think is just brilliant: "Simply better banking." That's it. And
Nice.
when they merged in with another institution, they took that slogan with them. And I just thought, good for you, Dave. Anyway, it's just, and they're people, you call them, they're as nice as they can be. I've never heard a negative tone, word, anything. How can we help you? And it's done. Jason,
Yeah.
how can we teach you? 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, I'm on this computer and I'm like, make sure and bill us, because they're working with me on this project, and that's just who they are. And so if
Yeah.
every agency could be like that, boy, the world would be a better place. Or
Well,
anyone.
how did they help you from a branding
Mhm.
and messaging standpoint? It sounds like they sort of help help better focus the credit union. Talk a little bit about that if you
Yeah,
would.
I'm looking around just for a second because I want to see if I have anything I can show you that would be the difference of where we were. So we're in the middle right now of a branding survey study, right? And when I first came to DuTrac, I'd be asked the following question: "What's DuTrac's brand?" And I said, "That's a good question." I said, "Can you tell me the brand of, say, Coca-Cola versus Pepsi, or Bank of America versus Chase? If you can, I'll tell you what the DuTrac brand is." Well, I can't. I said, "I can't either." I said, "I can only tell you what I see, and that's what the brand is, right?" And what JW Morton has done, they've interviewed 400 members, 600 non-members, employee surveys. We're at the point we're doing in-depth interviews. We're getting ready to do the advisory committee rollout of the recommendation. And what they've done is educate me on what brand is, how it's influenced, the nuances of communication that build up a brand or can tear it down,
Sure.
the importance in this day and age of having so many different fingers in digital pots of branding. Excuse my expression for that, but there's just so many places you need to touch in order to build that brand and build that brand recognition. And brand is an emotion. Branding is the marketing activity. And
Hmm.
you hear those words interchanged so frequently, and you hope that your branding does have a brand associated with it that does cause an emotional response, but they don't
Sure.
always do it. So
You sound like a marketer.
oh God, do I? I don't mean to. Truly, I really don't have the background in it, but thank you. I guess they've just been great teachers, and they've schooled me on that whole process. And they're gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. They're always the nicest, and they're just who they are. And
So
it's
let me ask you this. What do you see as the advantages and maybe on the flip side, the disadvantages of bringing an agency on board?
Yeah. So, initially, so we had a budget of like $1.6 million here at DuTrac. It'd been like $1 million for, the 12 to 14 years I've been here, but we finally got bumped up. But so like, this is something we would have done in the past. I'll see if the people can see it. See all that red and the go and all this stuff. A typical ad for us now, if I can find one, um, this isn't DuTrac, but it would look like a DuTrac ad, would be like this.
Okay.
Lots of
Very
white
good.
space, lots of clean stuff. And what I tell people they do, you now see DuTrac. You don't see DuTrac here. You see a bunch of color and some artist work, but here you see DuTrac, or the message we're trying to get conveyed. But
Right.
they an agency with the people like they have at JW Morton will streamline your communications process, and so that it's just a direct arrow. Instead of this shotgun approach that you may use, it's a rifle. You're right at it. And they school you along the way. They educate you. This is why we're doing this. This is why we are. This is our belief. This is our. And probably every agency has their own. But theirs matched what I had in my head for one thing, which I can't believe still didn't happen. But each step along the way, they educate. And if we didn't like it, they'd change it. They might, and then they would school us as to why they did, and they may talk about why your idea may not be as strong or is stronger or whatever. But they were always open to change, to discussing what was going on.
That's great.
That rapport, not a friendship, but that natural rapport of learning and giving and taking from each other and compromising and just growing was incredible. I feel like I've grown 20 years in two.
So, if you were talking to a marketer who was thinking about bringing a new agency on board or an agency on board for the first time, what advice would you give that marketer?
Yeah, I had never really worked with an agency in this way before. Obviously, I didn't have a marketing background, but we did
Yep.
this branding survey, so we had to go up for RFPs, right? And so we met different leaders really in the movement here in Iowa, and some were even from New York City or wherever, some big city folks. And what I personally would look for, again, is that rapport. Is there a give and take, a natural flow of give and take? And can you hear, and can they hear what you each are saying? And can you communicate? It's one thing to talk and speak to one another, but do you hear what I'm saying without needing to be interpreted or reevaluated? And having someone who said right off the bat, we're problem solvers. You throw it at us, we'll fix it. And they have never, ever let me down. And that, of course, comes with time. But in all those projects we had, 5 pages front and back, how many font sizes, during all that work, and there was a lot of it, there were only two little mistakes, and they weren't even big enough to talk about. And that also is something I looked for, was just a commitment from them to us. And they were cheering us on when we were having some pretty rough times, and they helped us cross that finish line. I said that before, but they did that for us, and they boosted our confidence. They made DuTrac a better credit union, more aware in the market space than we ever were before.
That's great. So just two more questions for you. Sort of a follow on from the question I just asked you. If I was an agency and I was trying to knock down your door and attempt to win business from you, what advice would you give that agency?
Well, I used to be a salesperson, and I respect people who are in sales. And I'm probably different than probably everyone else when it comes to this, but recently we were reached out to by a firm in Des Moines, and her approach was simply this: here's something I found out about you, a weakness that I discovered. I'd like to share with you how you can make that weakness better. And so she brought to me a fact. She told me how she could help me. Then she showed me how she could help me, and it was true to form. And I said, we have an agency of record right now. That's my term, not theirs. And so I'm just locked in with those folks, just emotionally and professionally, but because I really like their work. But I told her, I said, I will come to you when the time arises. And they provide an audit, a guidance on our audit for our digital marketing programs. They don't place the ads for us, mind you. And this guy was talking about that, and I said, because we get these requests all the time to have that money removed from the people we have it with. And not once has Dave or any of his team said, let's talk about those $1 million, I'm making that up, we're spending with digital marketing right now, and what we can do for you that's better. And I respect that. They could have asked a long time ago, but they haven't, nor have they
Sure.
asked to place any of the other ads as well. They've given us our lead, I guess, is what I would say. Let the agency give you your lead. Let them have your allow them. Well, how do I say this? I want them to allow you to have your own space.
Hmm.
Meaning, you have to be yourself still and work within your own reasonableness of assets, activities, resources, wherever you have. And then they come in and kind of build this bubble around you that moves you forward. And if you
Right.
can find that relationship in an agency, I'd say grab hold.
Yeah. That's
Does that
great.
make sense?
That's
I
great.
hope I answered that question. I
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
wasn't
Yeah.
very
Definitely.
detailed and everything, but
No, no, that's great. No, I think your example of that, woman coming in and identifying issues and offering ideas on how to solve it, I think is fantastic. And, there are too many agencies that just shout out about how great they are and, don't really tailor their messaging to the people they're reaching out to. So it's refreshing to hear that there are agencies that are still doing that, which is great. Um,
you find yourself getting like, I mean, I get like tons of emails from a salesperson saying, why aren't you taking my call? And they're almost rude, truly. And I'm thinking, and you think now that that's going to earn you my respect? I mean, it's just like, are you letting off steam, or you think this is a trick, or it's
right. I
amazing the
know.
tactics that people would use. I would say in my own world, I would do an email once or a call once. If they respond, I'd respond. I'd do a follow up if they didn't, and that was it. And
Yeah.
let things lie where they did. And I knew I was talking my right, and they're right. And if it worked out great, if they found someone else, good for them.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've got one last question for you, a little bit different here,
Okay.
just to close out the show. So your degree from Northwest Missouri State was in accounting, which I
Yeah.
get given the financial career, but it was also in European history. So I'm curious, what about European history was attractive to you? And have you applied any of that knowledge, those insights to your life personally or professionally today?
I have so many times. So my grandmother, this is going to sound like a remake of Downton Abbey, and I apologize to the people who are viewing, but my grandmother was born in Britain in 1900.
Okay.
And my grandfather was an American. He was served in the RAF. He wanted to be a fighter, a pilot. And he wanted to go over to the war, so he did. Was wounded, was nursed at her home, which was turned into a private hospital. And she would not marry him because she was single until they found that her first fiance's body or status as missing in action had changed.
Hmm.
They went to France, found the situation they needed to, and she married my grandfather. And you know, she was the oldest daughter of four daughters of an earl, the Earl of Kelvin and Hatch. And so, to
Hmm.
be funny, you would call a daughter of an earl a lady. His wife is a countess, but my grandmother's name was Erlus, a play on an earl, Erlus, a female, earl.
Yes.
And I thought, oh God, that poor woman. And she never did forgive her dad, but and it's just an interesting thing. But they would travel with me until I was 9 years old. I lived with them because there was a family situation going on there. But I lived with them in Europe. Went to public school, we call private school, and had that lifestyle. I came back home in my little shorts, my little beanie. And people thought you are a weird dude, And I kind of like, why? But within a couple of years, everyone had shorts and stuff. But anyway, but in my own personal life, I use that information of being a European history major every day. We
Hmm.
talk about our crisis in Ukraine. I understand that. I know where it's coming from.
Yeah.
Catherine did the same thing when she was Tsarina that Putin's doing today, but she kind of has the up on it, right? And then you understand, what's the motivation or what's going on? Why would they want that? And you can feed people that information. And I find myself as being like an end note to almost every event or story that takes place in our office. Well, why is that? And then you give that informative if they want to hear it or not. But we're one big world, and I think the sooner we realize that, if we can't get 10, then we don't have a relationship with Bolivia, where 98% of the world's 10 come from, type thing. So
Right.
we can't be just isolated, be on our own. And as
Yeah.
as our resources get smaller, we have to reach out and help those who have less, so we can all be in that world together
There you
and try and
go.
get through. and that's why I think I'd say European history to have that foundation. Sometimes I regret because of their colonial past. That's a different story, but they did what they did with what they had, and hopefully I can make the world a little bit better because of it.
Amen to that.
I hope
Like
so.
that.
I hope anyway. I mean, you only live once, make the most of it, right?
Absolutely. I always say life is short, so you
Sport.
gotta, be nice to people.
Hmm.
But so uh,
So on my desk all the time, when people walk in, this is the first thing they're going to see, and
nice.
yeah, it's it's,
Yeah,
a,
that's
it's something
great. Good
I
for you.
personally live by. And if we can be kind to people, and when we're at peace with ourselves, we can have peace with each other.
There you go. There you go. Well, listen, Jason, it's been great talking with you. I really appreciate you making the time. And
Thank you for asking.
absolutely,
I,
absolutely. Yeah,
I
it sounds
thank
like
you.
you've done some great things, with the bank or with the credit union, and yeah, no, I just applaud just the philosophy and approach, and the purpose that you've brought to
Thank you.
the DuTrac, and what seems to be the great things you're doing for the community, and so wish you all the best,
Thank you.
and thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
joining me today.
I enjoyed it. Thank you so much. Oh,
Yeah, no problem.
take care.
Thank you. All
Yeah.
right.